This isn't what you'd expect a nervous first-time mom to sound like. She should be sleep-deprived, anxious, worried, right? At the Christ Hospital Health Network, we try to build trust, give honesty and levity in equal measure, so you can ask any question, share any experience with someone who understands, someone that doesn't just sound like a doctor, but like a friend. The Christ Hospital Health Network, everything it takes.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 797, Postpartum Wellness with Dina Haggenjos.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Hello, and welcome to the Pound This Podcast. I am Amanda Valentine. What up? Before I get into this conversation with Dina, I want to talk to you about some amazing things in my life, and that would be my health coach, Sarah, and my amazing meal prep from Clean Eats. And I know that we're creeping up on January, and January is notorious for, hey, we're thinking about health and wellness. So if you have that on the brain or you're thinking about it, I will say that my weight loss journey, the one that actually stuck in work for me and my healthy lifestyle. And again, it's just not weight loss either. It's just completely changing my mindset around health and wellness. And I mean, really just life changing, was from a New Year's resolution in 2012. So if you are thinking about, hey, healthier mindset, healthier choices around food, exercise, but you need a little help, Sarah is great with Team Fit with me. Sarah is my health coach. She's been my health coach for a while. And trust me, she's been in the ups and downs of how whacked my life has been the past couple of years. So if you need some accountability, if you're needing help with maybe losing weight or gaining strength or reverse dieting or anything, Sarah can help, whether you got gut health issues, hormonal issues. I have Hashimoto's. I'm terrible at taking care of it, but Sarah has all sorts of great advice. But if you need a good health coach, definitely check out teamfitwithme.com/poundthis and you'll save 10% off of month one of all packages and plans. Sarah's fantastic. And also Clean Eats here in Cincinnati. I go to Newport, Westchester, also amazing. I can't tell you how much I've appreciated having meal prep made for me in my life. I've been a meal prepper for the past decade, and the amount of time it saves and just the variety. Because I mean, even though I do enjoy eating the same thing every day, that is kind of my jam. It has been very nice to not have to do all the dishes and not have to eat up my Sunday, meal prepping all my meals, and the food is absolutely delicious. This week, I'm eating barbecue cheeseburger bowls. Oh my God, they're so good. I order the fresh meals. I do 21 meals a week. You can do that. You can order less meals if you need to. There's a cafe there if you need to eat in person. Also, there's a grab and go meals that are all the frozen meals. Fantastic. If you're in Cincinnati, go to Newport or Westchester for Clean Eats. Go to cleaneats.com and check that all out. And right now, though, somebody who is also in Cincinnati. Let's talk to Dina. Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I am Amanda Valentine. My guest, who I am not going to attempt to say your last name. I'm horrible with names. Dina, last name.
Haggenjos.
There you go. as if I know that you pronounced it right. Dina, it's so funny because this happens all the time, at least for me, where I'm especially meeting new people. And we just get to chatting that we have talked for an extensive amount of time before we even started recording this podcast.
Yes.
We met for 2 seconds at the Ascending Women at Mad Tree while I was ordering some pizza. And we're going to have this podcast. And so I've been so excited to meet with you and chat with you more about everything that you do, which I will let you describe. I mean, you're a life and health coach, but are you officially a doula? Tell me about all the other things that you do.
Yeah. And I don't know how much you want me to go back, but first, thank you for having me. I know I creepily tapped on your shoulder when you were ordering pizza because I was like, I think that's Amanda. Sorry. So yes, I am a life and health coach for women. So I specialize in working with women. I am a certified postpartum doula, and I've taken some other birthing classes and stuff, but I don't focus on that. And I really coach women within a state of change. I say they're at a crossroads. So that crossroads can be postpartum. It can be having a baby. It could be pregnancy. It could be just wanting to switch jobs. It can be a big life change. But I say they're in a state of change. They're looking where they're at. They're taking sometimes a very brief pause to think about, okay, I've been doing this, or I've had this issue. I keep meeting these roadblocks, or maybe I really want to try something differently, but I just can't seem to crack the code on how to get there. And so I work with women that are in a state of change to really create a better connection to their life, themselves, their mindset, their nutrition, and overall wellness.
So what got you interested in doing this work?
Oh, well, I've always been interested in helping people in different capacities, but, I went into, I don't know how far back you want me to go.
As far back as you need to.
Because I feel like now, my business, my women's coaching business is Free Well. And I feel like, when I launched it and left the career that I had been working so hard to build and stuff, it shocked in some ways me, but it definitely shocked those around me. But once I took a look back at everything that I had been doing, it just like everything seemed to lead to that point. Right. But what got me, I'd say what was probably the catalyst was, for me, that state of change that really rocked my world was becoming pregnant and really doing a ton of research to figure out how I wanted to birth my baby. Where did I want to birth my baby? What choices did I have? Interviewing caregivers, really spending a ton of time on like my mindset to surround myself with the right kind of energy. And I had always, thought I was really passionate about health and wellness. My husband's a chiropractor. He's always sort of had this alternative view when it comes to life and health and doing those things. And I'd certainly learned a lot from him. But this was the first time in my life that I felt like I was really, truly figuring out, like taking in all of the information and making sense of it for myself to create a deeper connection to me, because I felt like at that time I had a home birth. I wanted to have a home birth. I didn't even know that that was a thing that people still did. But for me, it was the right choice. And I support women no matter where they want to birth their babies. So I always preface that, like, I'm not all for home birth. It's where you're going to feel most comfortable. But for me, that was one where I decided I wanted to have them. And in doing that, I realized, one, how much fear there is around just pregnancy and birth and labor. So that planted a bunch of seeds in me in terms of, why is there this fear, and what are we doing, and how can we get to better know this process no matter where we want to have our babies and that. And then when I did become a mom, there was just, as often as there was a ton of unraveling, because I was met at a big crossroads. One, I was a new mom. Two, my dad was terminally ill. So we were having to say goodbye to him. And I felt like he was one of the hardest working people I had known. And he was a few years away from retirement and wasn't going to get to experience what that was like. And I had built this really successful career, and a lot of it I loved, and a lot of it I didn't fully believe in. So I was just at that crossroads of like, what do I want to be doing, and how can I help in these areas that seem to make such a difference in my life in terms of like that connection. And it didn't immediately go to coaching, but I, took additional courses in nutrition, and integrative health and nutrition, and then went and got my doula certification, because I was like, well, maybe I want to work, directly as a birth doula or a postpartum doula. And, I just came to the feeling that when the babies were in me, I put so much time and energy and would rest unapologetically, and would eat what I needed to eat, whether that was something that quote unquote was good or bad for me, but like what I wanted. I would do certain things. There was this period after I had my twins, so my first pregnancy was with twins, that I kind of fell back into old ways. And I realized like I had felt so connected to myself when I was pregnant. And for me, that was the change that I needed, I guess, to rock my world in terms of having that deeper connection. And then when the babies were out, I put all my time and energy and back into other things. And it took me a lot of figuring out and, like I said, unraveling to get to the place of I'm worthy to care for myself. I can invest in myself in terms of what I want to be going after. And and just it was a researching of myself, which I know you and I were talking before this of like my career that I had built and spent so much time in was within research. I was an ethnographer, so I would go and spend, I did it in different capacities. I did it within organizations that were growing. I did it within brands, mega brands, more recently, a lot of female facing brands, but we would go and create these immersive experiences for teams to get to know the people that they were serving. And what I so often saw, like across the world, because we traveled and met all different kinds of people from all different kinds of cultures. And I would go and spend hours, sometimes days with them and be asking these questions of them of like, well, what's life like? Or what's been most challenging? Or what do you want your next chapter to be about? Or what do you think about this? Or your health or that? And you could just see that they had never really questioned any of these things. And so for me, like I said, when I became a mom, I reflected a lot back on that of how we just don't research ourselves. I could tell you where the toys were. I could tell you what everyone was eating and what they needed and how to appease and know where everyone and everything was. And I needed to focus more inwardly. So that's a really roundabout way of like, I wanted to, one, help people research themselves more and get to know themselves more to create that deeper connection that had made such a big difference in my life. For me, a big change was becoming a mom and then going through the experience of kind of losing a bit of that strong connection that I had created in my pregnancy and feeling through that postpartum, and then taking these tools that I had built and, in my career and then within the coaching work and, nutrition and certification work that I had done to kind of blend them into what I do now with women.
I mean, I don't have kids, so I'm not a mom, so I obviously can't speak from any sort of experience. I can just speak from my general understanding and from the people I know. But I think culturally, it seems to be understood that women tend to lose their identity after having babies, and it sounds like that's where you can help and experiencing that for yourself of how do you not completely lose yourself in that process.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that was very much on my mind, and I feel like in some ways I had seen that happen to friends, family members, or where I felt like, okay, that's happening. And I remember having conversations before becoming a mom with a good friend of mine that had welcomed children into her life and saying, the kids joined our lives, joined our schedules, and, we're going to adjust. And part of it is you don't know what you don't know until you're in it. Right. Mm-hmm. But for me, certainly that crossroads of becoming a mom is what really got me to think. And I think, again, it was just a lot of things happening. Losing my dad when I did, being a new mom with these two humans now relying on me, and loving a lot of what I was doing, but knowing that I could, that I was so passionate about, like, how can I, one, continue the journey of getting to know myself more, right? Of researching myself, getting to know, have a better relationship with my food. I felt really good about my food, and what I was doing, and even my rest, and what I was doing for me mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of those things for my health. Again, when I was pregnant, and I kind of fell into old patterns that I thought they were pretty healthy. You know, in my teens and 20s, I could probably get away with like, oh, I just need to exercise some and do this. But as your plates get fuller, whether you have children or don't have children, as life goes on and stuff, I just find like we have to get rid of things that don't serve us anymore. And so like, you know, there's a bit of unraveling when we meet these life crossroads that get us to think about life in a different way and what we want to be doing, right? And achieving. So I feel like, yeah, for me, that thought of losing myself, becoming a mom was on my mind, but more was the question of like, what do I want to be doing? Like, in addition to being a great mom and being, you know, in my relationship with my husband and stuff, what else do I want to be doing, you know, and helping.
So it seems like too, like just with anything, or you're talking about big life changes, I think that a part that I have going through major life changes myself is that, you know, there's so many positive upsides to some of these changes, but there's also a grief process too. And I think that's where it seems like it'd be really important to have somebody that understands going with you of how do you, those things that don't serve you anymore were things that served you for a long time and you probably love and care about. But if you have to let them go, then how do you grieve that loss?
Yeah. I feel like, you know, with the clients that I get to work with, and I do both individual coaching and group coaching programs. And I feel like this is a very common theme that we talk about across the board of, you know, if I talk a lot about notice, honor, grow. Like we have to notice what we've been doing up until this point. So the woman that was before the children, or just before you walked into this door, this moment right here, like all those things, and see them, because one, they're going to want to be heard. And especially if we're struggling with like to make a change, or you feel like, I hear this a lot of, you know, I know the thing, I know better, but I don't do it. And I hate that saying of like, know better, do better, because we're smart, we're savvy. We oftentimes know what that thing is, but it's not as easily translated, especially as life gets busier, as more gets on your plate, as careers and life changes and stuff, and different crossroads meet you. I feel like that place between knowing and doing, there's a lot that falls in between there. And I just feel like that you have to do some unraveling and getting to knowing, and you have to notice what you've been doing up until that point. I was just having a conversation with a client the other day about this, she was doing some of the work that we do at the beginning of the session, of kind of like noticing and the groundwork of figuring out what's been true up to this point and stuff. And she's like, well, I really feel like I have a lot of these patterns. And I'm afraid that maybe I'm in this pattern again. Like I traced it back my whole life and I can see it happening for a third time. And I'm like, or, you know, you just say up until this point, and everything before that, like that just there, can help change. You know, a lot of women, even this is common for prenatal and postpartum, because they talk a lot about affirmative language, you know, and surrounding yourself. And that's common for any time of change. You know, you surrounding yourself and filling your mind with the kind of energy and thoughts that you want to be doing and about, of like that simple tweak of, you know, for some women saying I am, or I believe this, or it's really hard because they don't believe it yet, right? They're not quite there, but you can notice it, like what you've done up to this point, and you can say up until this point, I've done X, Y, and Z, and now I'm working on, or something, like the little changes there to shift the thinking and shift the energy into the space that you're working towards.
I think also just in part of that process of not bullying yourself and recognizing when you're doing that, because it's like, I think it's one of those things where you're like, I do know better and I'm not actively doing that. Then you start telling yourself, oh, well, I'm a terrible person. And of course I'm failing at that. Like, you know what I mean? You just go into that loop because then you're never going to get any headway. I mean, I think it's just that positive mindset of like getting out of that space where you're beating yourself up. Like that's not going to get you anywhere. Focusing on what you should quote unquote be doing and what you have done it's just kind of like, how do you pack that all up and toss that away and start fresh?
Yeah. I mean, I used to say, you and I were talking about this before now, about like my past research work, and I would take teams on these trainings before we would go out and actually research what we were researching, whether it was an environment or a space or a group of people or a person or whatever. And one of the things I would used to say to them and remind is, if you are having any should thoughts, like, oh my gosh, she shouldn't hold the baby that way. You know, like I said, I worked with a lot of female oriented brands, or she shouldn't feed him this way, or, you know, anytime that should creeps up. And the same applies for the work that I do now with individuals and groups, is like, that's just a judgment that you're placing. And whose judgment is it? Is it external forces or what? But like, get the shoulds out of here, because they're not going to help. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you work with clients, like typically what kind of clients are you working with, and like, what's that process look like?
Yeah. So do you want to talk about individuals or the postpartum group or other? Okay. Well, I would definitely say, in terms of that notice, honor, grow, there's a period of that. So even with the, whether you're coming in as an individual coaching client or a group client, which right now the only group program that I'm running is the postpartum program. We focus on noticing what's been true, and also just this, there's a phase of like getting out. The work that you get to do with a coach, I like to say, is we get to really get to the core of maybe identifying some of the barriers that maybe you've experienced, whether it's mindset or physically or mentally, whatever it is, but then taking steps to move forward. But we can't move forward until we've fully seen what's there. So that's what that noticing is about, and seeing and honoring what's been going on. So for like a postpartum mom, oftentimes they're in a space, depending on where they've come to me, which I've had them from some prenatal, and then they've had their baby and they're working with me, and some that are, you know, a few days, weeks, months to 8 months to, I've had some that are 20 years postpartum, you know, some empty nesters. But there's a period that I call seeing with new eyes. Like, we have to take a step back and like think about everything that she's done to get up to this point. If you're postpartum, even just processing your birth experience, because often like once that baby, I remember the first night with my babies, and suddenly all the birthing team members left and everything, and there's these 2 new people here, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is surreal. Like, of course I've been thinking about you for many months, but suddenly you're here, and that's, you know, very real. And then you're thrown into figuring out like, oh my gosh, I have humans relying on me for everything. And so there begins that shift of, we're not going to, our attention is then taken a little bit more away from ourselves and into this area of thinking about everyone else and everything else around us. So that noticing period could look like, for the postpartum moms, of process one, open secret. We have to go through this time of like, this is a time where we get to show up just as we are, be heard. Some days are going to feel maybe good or lighter or better. You know, they say, oh, this is a good day with the baby, or this is a really hard one. But, you know, just show up where you are, notice that, tuning into your body. So we go through some practices that she can rely on, that quite easily to do for herself. And then we will take a look back of like, what just happened, you know, process the birth experience, process everything that her and maybe her partner have dealt with up to this point, and then see, you know, oftentimes when I play that back, so this is what you've been doing, you know, and this happens a lot even with the one-on-one clients, is there's this hearing her story and everything that she's done and her highs and lows. Oftentimes she's brought to tears because she doesn't think of it. One, we just kind of continue to go through the motions. And there's like this, oh my gosh, I have been doing a lot of stuff, and I have been trying really hard, and I've gotten stuck along the way, or can't seem to figure out this thing that I want to work on that maybe brought her to me, but I've done a lot. And that's really a better place to start for any kind of change, from that place of like love and appreciation, because oftentimes when they come to me, they're in this state of like frustration, high anxiety, overwhelm, sometimes even disgust with themselves because they can't seem to do the things that they want to do, And so that's what does that answer your question in terms of like what that's about?
Oh, for sure.
So we have to get to that place of noticing and honoring in order to, I feel like, move forward for sustainable change. Yeah.
So for the postpartum group that you're doing, which that begins in January, is that correct?
Yes, January of 2023, the last week of January is the live group start, and that's with me and Dr. Alexis, and it's a 12-week program. So I've done this program before, and it's one of the favorites. It's the program that I wanted to do when I thought of starting my coaching program, because I wish I had it. But that starts in January, but the seats are open now.
So I went on your website and I just saw some of the things that you discuss on it. And one of the things I think is a very important topic, which I've covered multiple times on this podcast, is just pelvic floor work.
Oh, yes.
So I love that that's part of your program. So not only all of the mental health of it, but like also I think every person, whether you've had a baby or not, needs to work on pelvic floor.
Yeah. And I feel like being in this space, and, having our chiropractic practice and a lot of practitioners, I have met and known a lot of them, but I feel like even locally, it's grown substantially, which I'm so happy about. And it's being talked about more. Pelvic floor for both genders, honestly, which is great, but so needed for women, whether you've birthed a baby or not. Like it's a big need. And I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Alexis in on this, because she's going to add a whole new level to this in terms of breath work and pelvic floor and function and things to watch out for, and what's normal and what's not, and when to see someone and who to see and all that. So it's going to be great. Yeah.
So is this like I'm assuming virtual, correct?
Yes. So it's 12 weeks, all virtual. They can join from anywhere. It's also for any postpartum mom. So the content is probably most useful for that 0 to 12 month marker. But really, if you're feeling like you're in that state of change, and you're wanting help to figure out how to tame the chaos, as one past participant called it, then this might be a great program to look into. And also just become more confident in motherhood and more grounded and less anxious. And there's a blend of mom healing and care and education and resources for her, along with holistic care and practices for baby. So I love the blend. Yeah.
So is this something that these are live videos that people need to attend, like Zoom meetings, or are these just videos that are downloaded? How does it actually work?
Great question. So 12 weeks, you're going to get a weekly email, all participants. And when I've done this in the past, I've experimented a couple different ways with a group, with a community thread. And one thing that I know about postpartum moms is we just need it in the simplest way possible. And I don't want another app on my phone. So they're going to get a weekly email with all their needed information, things that they could implement right away, things to prepare themselves for the next call that they could dive into a little bit before, if they wanted to. They don't have to, but it's going to be all there. And things that they can save for later, because you're going to get a wealth of stuff that we say, like, you can carry this with you. I got a note recently from one of the participants from one of the very first village groups that I did. And she was saying, I still go back to your resources. and she's a mom of triplets. And
Yikes.
2 years later, right? Yeah. 2 years later, she's still going back to it. So yes, it is weekly Zoom calls with me and Dr. Alexis of Absolute Kinetics Physical Therapy. And there's going to be some education, key topics, both mind, body, family, logistics, all of that. And then body work that she'll be doing, or breath work. Again, that's meets each mom where they're at. So you'll get, coaching around that, exercises, information. And then the added bonus that I've always done in some capacity with this program is that you get 12 weeks of a private text messaging thread between Dr. Alexis and I and the community members, so the other moms within the village. And that's really lovely, because one of the things I love about coaching and what we get to do is we want to not just educate and give you information to think about in terms of, and help you figure out what might be right for you, for your family, but help you work through the trials of that. We don't want to just send you off and say, here, go do it, but let's work through it and troubleshoot. So questions are going to come up in between those weekly sessions, or, hey, did you think about this? Or moms want to share resources or questions and stuff, or photos. There's always baby photos and stuff. But that's you get direct access to us to ask the questions and also share among the group. So 12 weeks, weekly Zoom call, a weekly email, a private text messaging thread, and then lots of bonuses and resources.
Awesome. So how does somebody sign up for that?
You can go to my website, www.myfreewill.com/village. And it's on all the pages there, but you can scroll down to the bottom and find more about what the program's all about and what it is again. And right now the groups do start on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Those group lives are recorded. So in case you can't make a call, you can watch the replay and get all of the resources and everything. And we do have some spotlight guests too. So you'll get a chance to ask questions to submit for those as well. And I could talk more about the agenda or other things that we'll be talking about there too. But
awesome. So I'll put the links for that in the show notes and everything too. So I'm sure that's going to be helpful for a lot of moms. I did a podcast not too long ago with a lactation expert, and everybody had a lot of questions.
Yes.
That's where, again, me being a non-mom, where I'm like, I have no idea what to ask. And so everybody's like, we have lots of questions. Don't worry.
Oh yes. That's a whole nother thing. And that's one of the topics. That's always a hot topic within this program every time I run it and I have moms that join this group that had hospital births, that had home births, that had birthing center births, and some that are breastfeeding, some that are pumping, some that are doing a blend. And that's one of the reasons I love this village community that we form with this group, because you get that peer-to-peer learning. You also get a better understanding of other moms and how they're doing it. And you build confidence that way. You also get to teach one another. And I just see, Dr. Alexis and I, we have a lot of similarities and a lot of differences in our perspectives, which I love that we're going to bring that. But I love bringing that element with the coaching aspect, because I feel like the community that we form every time I do this program is very much that of you have lots of different moms doing it lots of different ways, which is wonderful and needed, and a great reminder for moms postpartum, because you're right, they come with a lot of questions, especially if this is their first time around motherhood. Then they're oftentimes insecure or wondering if they did it right or wrong, and there's a lot of comparison. So when you get into that group community and hear how other moms are doing or that they're struggling, you just don't feel as alone. And it's so helpful to see and hear and appreciate different perspectives and kind of take what you can to form what's right for you.
Awesome. Well, I hope that anybody hearing this is like, oh my gosh, this is my group, has kind of found their people, because it definitely seems like one of those things that the more people you can have but to bounce ideas off of, the better. There's a lot to navigate, where I'm like, again, just even knowing navigating health and fitness and weight loss and exercise, all that is enough. But then thinking about raising a human. That is a whole nother level of work that you should absolutely ask for some advice on.
Well, there's a lot of elements to when we welcome a new human. Again, this group is open to new moms, to moms welcoming their first, second, third, whatever child. Because every time you do welcome in a new human, like there's a new set of challenges, to figure out, and new rhythms to figure out. And, we touch on relationships, we touch on the invisible labor load and how to divide and conquer and work through those, and how to feel closer to your partner versus, less connected. And we bring in different perspectives on that. And we talk about, like I said, the baby care aspect. We talk about her home care. Dr. Alexis is going to talk a lot about, when you do want to get back to movement, what that could look like, and what kind of movement to do and what to think about. For me, I actually was a patient of Dr. Alexis's before anything, because I got back to running and I wasn't very smart about it. One, I hadn't healed my diastasis recti, the separation of the abdominal muscles, and I had a lot going on there. And then I started running with a stroller, and that adds a whole different level of problems that I later had to deal with. At first it was fine, and then it caught up with me physically, and I was dealing with a lot of injuries that I quite frankly probably could have prevented had I known more upfront in terms of being more mindful in terms of getting into that. So it's my favorite program to run, one of my favorite programs because of that group community, because postpartum is a raw time for any mom. You're hormonally raw, you're up and down, and you have this human, you're sleep deprived and stuff. So we're not meant to do that alone. And this is just to help support her through those changes.
Well, it sounds totally amazing and totally necessary. So thank you for all you do. And I had such an awesome time getting to know you and your backstory. And we'll definitely have to do another podcast again and have the conversation we had before recording this, talking about entrepreneurship, which is its own sort of thing that you need a village for too.
Yeah. I feel like my mind is somewhat still there, but yes. Yeah. I am, this was wonderful. Thank you for having us on. We are running a special right now. So if you go on to the myfreewell.com website and again, click on the postpartum virtual village, again, it's all virtual, so you can join from anywhere. You'll see that for our launch week, we are running a special.
Awesome. Well, Dina, it was so great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
AmandaValentineBites.com